Hello, this is the compliance update for the first week in November in New Mexico. New Mexico state regulators hear from the public on proposed cannabis courier, manufacturing, and retail rules. The New Mexico Regulation and Licensing Department and its Cannabis Control Division heard from the public on Thursday during a public rulemaking hearing regarding cannabis couriers, retail establishments, and manufacturing facilities. The comments during the meeting varied from proposed regulations for packaging requirements, general business practices, to cannabis deliveries to both businesses and residents. Albuquerque-based cannabis attorney Katie Duhigg brought up a series of issues she said she would like to see and changed. Katie Duhigg brought up a series of issues she said she would like to see changed and offered specific suggestions. Duhigg took issue with a proposed requirement that cannabis manufacturers prove they have access to water rights because manufacturing doesn't necessarily use water the same way cultivation does. Duhigg also said she was concerned with a provision that would limit cannabis retail businesses from giving away free products to anyone but medical cannabis patients. Duhigg also suggested the department revisit a proposed rule that would limit cannabis deliveries to residential addresses. She said it would put an unreasonable burden on couriers to decide what is considered a residence. In Colorado voters reject a plan to increase cannabis taxes for education agency. Colorado voters have rejected a proposal to raise taxes on adult-use cannabis in the state from 15% to 20% as part of a plan to create an independent education agency. Proponents of the proposition conceded at 8:30 p.m. Tuesday when polls showed 54% of voters had voted no on the plan. With 86% of precincts reporting, the margin had not changed significantly, with 54.5% of voters rejecting the initiative and 45.5% in support. Opponents of the plan included teachers' unions, the cannabis industry, and some anti-tax conservatives who argued that the measure would create a new bureaucracy that would possibly be unconstitutional. Marijuana Industry Group Executive Director Truman Bradley said he was glad cannabis businesses will not be footing the bill for new projects that provide no accountability or transparency to voters. In Washington, the Wslcb issued a bulletin regarding the CCRS Go Live milestones. CCRS testing and development has been well underway since the LCB sent initial communications about the project. The CCRS team has developed some major milestones and goals for CCRS before, during, and after the launch. With about a month to go before CCRS deployment, let's review some of the expectations and upcoming deadlines. Third-party integrator approval process. On October 27, 2021, the LCB sent a message to licensees and integrators regarding the newly developed third-party integrator approval process. Steps for approval were detailed in that message and are listed on the LCB CCRS webpage. Integrators interested in being added to the approved integrator list should follow the approval process and submit their applications by November 22, 2021 for full consideration. Access to the CCRS test environment for all users. Testing access in the CCRS system has been ongoing for the past few weeks. You will continue to have access moving forward for setting up your system and continued testing. Integrators will lose access to the test environment effective November 22, 2021 if they have not followed the third-party integrator approval process. In terms of decommissioning leaf, LCB will be decommissioning use of leaf at a later date, so keep an eye out for upcoming LCB communications detailing more information about the decommissioning of leaf. CCRS launch expectations. CCRS will launch the file submission and manifest web form on December 6, 2021. The manifest form is available for testing until December 1, 2021. Hello, this is the compliance update for the second week of November in Oregon. The OLCC will resume processing new applications for some cannabis license types. In 2018, the OLCC released an informational bulletin announcing a pause on processing new license applications in order to focus on existing licensees and applicants who had already submitted applications. Since that time, the OLCC has made significant changes to streamline licensing and renewal processes that generally accelerates the licensing process. With these changes in place, the OLCC is now able to shift licensing staff back to processing new license applications. Retailer, wholesaler, and processor applications submitted after June 15, 2018. The OLCC has begun contacting these applicants to determine if they want to move forward with the license application process. Applicants who are ready are able to indicate so by submitting a completed request for assignment. Once assigned to an investigator, applicants will have 60 calendar days to complete the licensing process. Producer applications submitted after June 15, 2018. In 2019, the legislature passed Senate Bill 218, which requires the OLCC to inactivate any new producer applications submitted after June 15, 2018. The OLCC is not able to accept new producer applications until that law is repealed, which takes place January 2, 2022. In Montana regulators propose more marijuana rules. Advocates are concerned about worker permit provisions. The Montana Department of Revenue has come out with 2 more packages of proposed rules as they prepare for the start of recreational cannabis sales in January. Cannabis advocates say they are concerned one of the provisions is going to put too many limits on who can take jobs in the industry. The newly proposed rules were released last week. Many of them deal with enforcement and potential penalties for cannabis licensees. The provision that has drawn the most comment could block some people from working for cannabis businesses if they have had a criminal conviction of any kind in the last 3 years. The new proposed rule states conviction, guilty plea, or plea of no contest to a criminal offense within 3 years of the application or renewal could be grounds for suspending or revoking a worker's permit. In Nevada, proposed amendments to the NCCR. The Nevada Cannabis Compliance Board will hold a public workshop on November 10, 2021 regarding proposed amendments and additions to the NCCR. These proposed changes provide definitions for diversity applicant and diversity certifying entity and expand on Nevada's certification process for diversity applicants. In California's cannabis social equity programs are not meeting goals. A report issued by the California Cannabis Industry Association took a hard look at 7 jurisdictions that have social equity programs and found them lacking. California's cannabis social equity programming is not working as intended, concludes the report, which lambasted the programs for falling far short of their intended goals. The report was written by the Diversity, Inclusion, and Social Equity Committee of the California Cannabis Industry Association. Social equity grants are issued by the state with little accountability, while local programs stall and funds remain unallocated, the report noted. Applicants are waiting years for local approval, yet paying thousands of dollars in rent for property that is yet to be utilized. The CCIA report focused on cities and counties that were among the first to receive state funding under a 2018 law, the California Cannabis Equity Act, which provided millions of dollars in grants to Long Beach, Los Angeles, Oakland, Sacramento, and San Francisco, as well as Humboldt and Mendocino counties. The report found that despite well-intended plans, the participants in most of these social equity programs had been underserved and unable to get their business operational. This is the compliance update for the 3rd week in November. In Colorado, Colorado's new medical cannabis rules include stricter purchase limits. Colorado will impose stricter cannabis purchase limits, require retailers to provide a concentrates information pamphlet to customers who purchase the products, and impose a ban on medical cannabis marketing to people under 21 years old, under the new industry rules announced last week. The new regulations take effect on January 1st. The policies limit daily purchases to 2 ounces of flower and 8 grams of concentrate for medical cannabis patients, and the concentrate limit goes down to 2 grams per day for patients between 18 and 20 years old. The previous daily concentrates purchase limit for patients was 40 grams. Dispensaries must enforce the new limits by inputting patient ID numbers and are required to refuse a sale to anyone who seeks to exceed the limit. The collected data must be kept confidential. Patients are able to receive exemptions from the rule from their physician, indicating a physical or geographic hardship. The patient must also designate a store as the primary place to get their medicine. In Washington, the Wslcb distributed a document regarding how to prepare for success in CCRS, a quick start guide for licensees. With the transition to CCRS in December quickly approaching, the LCB has compiled a document for licensees to reference with some reminders and initial steps for getting started with CCRS. The document covers leaf data remediation and the transition from leaf to CCRS, getting ready and reviewing resources, information for directly reporting to CCRS, information for working with an integrator to report to CCRS, testing resources, details regarding the CCRS welcome email, selecting an integrator, and initial data load into the system. When leaf is decommissioned, the state will receive the system's final output. There will be no further opportunities to edit leaf data after the system is decommissioned. Those needing to modify data in leaf should do so before the December 6th switch to CCRS. Leaf will no longer be available after December 18th. Ensuring data consistency between Leaf's last data and the first CCRS data will be different for each user. Some users may have no remediation or adjustments needed, while others may have various needs. The data reports of focus should be inventory, plants, and destruction with disposal. As always, licensees are responsible for the accuracy of all data in Leaf. Another update in Washington, the Wslcb issued a policy statement regarding payment of vendor fees by certified cannabis testing labs. The following policy statement describes how certified cannabis testing labs pay vendor fees for validation and ongoing monitoring. For complete context and analysis of this topic, let's explore more below. Consistent with WAC, the Washington State Liquor and Cannabis Board may require third-party validation and ongoing monitoring of a certified lab's basic proficiency to correctly execute the analytical methodologies employed by the certified lab. Wslcb may contract with a vendor to conduct the validation and ongoing monitoring described in the rule. The certified lab must pay all vendor fees for validation and ongoing monitoring directly to the Wslcb or its vendor. This policy statement supersedes and replaces Board Interim Policy 11-2019. In Arizona, the deadline for state-mandated training to run cannabis businesses is approaching. The deadline to get state-mandated training to run a cannabis dispensary or similar business in Arizona as part of a social equity ownership program is fast approaching. Wednesday is the last day for applicants to take free classes so they can try to obtain the 26 licenses set aside for people from communities disproportionately impacted by previous cannabis laws. Completing the courses is part of the application process. License applicants must show they have resided for at least 3 years between 2016 and 2020 in areas identified as disproportionately affected by previous cannabis laws. The State Department of Health Services looked at socioeconomic data to come up with its list of zip codes that qualify. Applicants must take the courses about the challenges of a cannabis-oriented business according to the State Department of Health Services website. All the recorded training sessions are accessible on the site. Anyone can set up an account to watch them, whether they apply for the licenses or not. This is the compliance update for the 4th week of November in California. The DCC issued a notice of proposed rulemaking to adopt AB 1525 regulations. DCC is providing notice to the public of a proposed regulatory action to adopt regulations implementing Assembly Bill 1525. These regulations provide cannabis businesses the ability to authorize DCC to share licensee application and regulatory information with financial institutions. If approved, this rulemaking action would permanently adopt the regulations. These regulations provide a way for financial institutions to more easily conduct federally required reviews of the cannabis business. By reducing the burden of providing financial services to cannabis businesses, more financial institutions may be willing to provide services. This would reduce the need to keep cash on hand and improve public safety. You can submit written comments on the proposed regulatory action to the DCC. All comments must be received by January 4th, 2022 at 5 p.m. Submit your comment to DCC by mail or email. If submitting by mail, submit to 2920 Kilgore Road, Rancho Cordova, California. If by email, that email address is publiccomment@cannabis.ca.gov. In Arizona, an Arizona suit aims to keep social equity permits away from large marijuana firms. A lawsuit filed against the state of Arizona by a cohort of social equity advocates alleges that regulators haven't done enough to ensure that 26 cannabis business permits will wind up with entrepreneurs who were actually harmed by the war on drugs, and that the licenses might instead become controlled by multi-state operators. The suit, filed by the Greater Phoenix Urban League and social equity company Acre 41, claims that the final state regulations adopted by the Arizona Health Department do not go far enough to protect the intent of the social equity provisions in state law. According to a news release issued by the plaintiffs, quote, "As it stands now, the regulations proposed by the state do not prohibit venture capital firms and large, mostly white-owned, multi-state marijuana companies from snatching up all social equity licenses from the 26 successful applicants, effectively defeating the purpose of the voter-approved social equity program." The Phoenix New-Times reported that many existing marijuana companies are aggressively trying to recruit qualified social equity candidates to partner with in order to obtain some of the 26 available licenses. The 26 permits will likely prove very valuable, considering they will bring the total number of retail licenses to 169 in the limited market. In Utah, lawmakers say medical cannabis should be treated like any other prescription drug in Utah. Legally speaking, medical cannabis is supposed to be treated like any other prescription-controlled substance in Utah. Voters called for it when they passed Proposition 2, and the Utah State Legislature made the official policy in a series of bills that have regulated medical cannabis. So several conservative lawmakers were visibly irate to discover on Wednesday that some local governments have been refusing to recognize medical cannabis as a legal controlled substance, especially when it comes to government employees. It is an issue that the Utah Patients Coalition, which advocates for medical cannabis patients, has been battling for some time. The issue finally came to a head in Wednesday's hearing of the Utah State Legislature's Government Operations Interim Committee. The committee gave its support to a bill that would double down on the state's policy that medical cannabis be treated like any other controlled substance. Government employees obviously cannot use medical cannabis on the job or be impaired, but they also could not face punishment for being a legal user. And another update in California. California regulators about to increase marijuana taxes again. For the second time since California launched its legal cannabis market in 2018, regulators are going to raise marijuana taxes statewide. According to a notice from the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, all three types of marijuana cultivation taxes will increase effective January 1st, 2022. The tax increase stems from a state law requiring the CDTFA to recalculate the cultivation tax rates once a year because of inflation. The tax rates for marijuana flower per dry weight ounce will increase from $9.65 to $10.08. The tax rates for cannabis leaves will increase from $2.87 to $3, and the tax rates for fresh marijuana plant material will increase from $1.35 to $1.41. The taxes in question are all paid by marijuana growers. Hello, this is the compliance update for the first week in November in South Dakota. South Dakota medical cannabis establishment application deadline is coming up. South Dakota's new medical marijuana industry reaches an important milestone next week. Monday is the deadline for people who want to apply to operate a medical cannabis business in communities with limits on the number of medical marijuana establishments. South Dakota voters approved legalizing medical marijuana on Election Day last November, almost 1 year to the day of Monday's application deadline for medical cannabis establishments. Such operations include cultivator, manufacturer, dispensary, and testing facilities. The Department of Health released the application forms this past Monday. There is a non-refundable $5,000 application fee, so that would weed out only those who are serious about starting a medical cannabis business in South Dakota. The application will not be considered complete until the money is received. Processing of the application may take up to 90 days. Applicants also have to provide details about their production plans, including the number of plants being cultivated, building specs, and the types of chemicals that would be used. If someone else owns the property, that person would have to give consent for its use as a medical cannabis facility. At least one of the main backers of the operation has to be a resident of South Dakota, and all of them need to undergo a criminal background check. In Michigan, a message from the MRA Enforcement Director regarding Delta 8. Delta 8 products are not permitted for sale in any retail location, including MRA licensed locations, and must not be entered into the statewide monitoring system. At this time, the only permissible handling of Delta 8 products is by way of MRA-approved research and development. Any MRA-licensed location that currently has Delta 8 products in their inventory must destroy the products or they will be subject to MRA disciplinary actions. Any questions should be directed to mra-enforcement@michigan.gov. Another update in Michigan. Michigan lawmakers approve bills to restrict medical marijuana cultivation by caregivers. Several bills that changed the state's 2008 voter-approved Michigan Medical Marijuana Act and Caregiver program moved out of committee Tuesday and are headed to the House floor. House Bills 5300 through 5302, known as the Michigan Cannabis Safety Act, tighten rules for caregivers related to plant allowances, product testing, and where they can grow medical cannabis. The new legislation would create a new specialty medical marijuana grower license for caregivers that includes a variety of regulations. The House of Representatives Regulatory Reform Committee approved House Bills 5300 through 5302 and 5319 through 5321, with most passing 10-2 and a few members abstaining. The committee adopted last-minute changes to House Bill 5300 and 5301 before the vote, adding language that allows unlicensed caregivers to serve up to 5 patients from their primary residence. However, unlicensed caregivers could only grow 24 cannabis plants at their home. Hello, this is the compliance update for the second week of November in Ohio. Board of Pharmacy begins accepting provisional dispensary license applications. The Board of Pharmacy is now accepting applications for provisional medical marijuana dispensary licenses. The application period will close at 2 p.m. on November 18th, 2021. In Michigan, modifications to state law regarding eligibility for medical marijuana licenses. Governor Whitmer signed into law House Bill 4295, which amends the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act to specify the following. Individuals who have been convicted of certain marijuana-related felony or misdemeanor offenses are eligible for a marijuana state operating license unless the felony involved the distribution of cannabis to a minor. Applicants who are elected officers or employees of a federally recognized Indian tribe or elected precinct delegates are eligible for a cannabis state operating license. The spouse of a person who applied for a cannabis state operating license is eligible for licensure, unless the spouse's position created a conflict of interest, was within the MRA, or a state federal regulatory body making decisions regarding medical cannabis. The MRA may no longer consider the integrity, moral character, reputation, or personal probity of an applicant in evaluating eligibility for licensure. HB 4295 also prohibits the MRA from evaluating an applicant's suitability for a cannabis state operating license based on whether he or she had committed cannabis-related offenses, with the exception of felonies involving the distribution of cannabis to a minor. This law takes effect immediately. In Missouri, promotion events are allowed under proposed Missouri medical cannabis rules. Missouri officials have proposed new medical cannabis industry rules that would allow them to hold promotional events and publicize price discounts, backtracking on a previous directive prohibiting promotional activities. Under the proposal, any promotional activities would be required to include a disclaimer that reads, "Medical decisions should not be made based on advertising. Consult a physician on the benefits and risks of particular medical marijuana products." In a statement last week, the Missouri Medical Cannabis Trade Association said medical cannabis patients were harmed by the former rule. Andrew Mullins, the organization's executive director, told the news leader that it is absolutely essential that patients have accurate, timely information and education that allows them to make good health decisions, and that's exactly what this rule rewrite will allow them to do. This is the compliance update for the third week in November in Ohio. Ohio senators mulling major revisions to medical marijuana system. Ohio senators have filed legislation that represents a broad revision of the state's medical marijuana system. Among the changes is language expanding access to the drug if a physician, quote, reasonably believes their patient's symptoms would be relieved or they would be otherwise benefit from cannabis. It's a potentially massive expansion of eligibility for patients after years of piecemeal additions to the list of qualifying conditions. But for the bill's sponsor, Senator Steve Huffman, a streamlined regulatory structure is the measure's primary aim. The biggest example is the Department of Pharmacy regulates dispensaries, and the Department of Commerce regulates cultivators. So if you own one of each, you have to go to each different agency to make business decisions. He notes the Department of Pharmacy will still manage a database of prescriptions through the Ohio Automated Rx Reporting System, or OARRS, but most oversight will fall under the purview of a new division of marijuana control housed in the Commerce Department. Huffman also believes the measure will encourage the department to offer more licenses as the market grows and put pressure on license holders to bring product to market rapidly. In Michigan, fiscal year 2022 medical marijuana operation and oversight grants have been issued. The MRA recently announced that the medical marijuana operation and oversight grant application for fiscal year 2022 is available. Operation and oversight grants are to be distributed at the county level for education, communication, and outreach regarding the 2008 Michigan Medical Marijuana Act. The Michigan legislature has appropriated a total of $3 million for the 2022 medical marijuana operation and oversight grants. As in years past, these grants may not be used for law enforcement purposes. The amount of funds available to each county is calculated based on the number of marijuana registry ID cards issued or renewed in the county as of September 30th, 2021. This is the compliance update for the fourth week of November in Michigan. Michigan recalls cannabis products tested by Viridis Labs over 3 months. The Michigan Marijuana Regulatory Agency, or the MRA, has issued a recall for products tested over the past 3 months by Viridis Laboratories and Viridis North. Affecting 400 retail locations around the state, the agency announced the recall after noticing, quote, inaccurate and or unreliable results. Regulators said that everything except for vape cartridges, live resin products, and distillates tested between August 10th and November 16th could be dangerous, with patients who are immunocompromised or with lung diseases facing the greatest potential for harm. The agency asks consumers to be wary of lung infections caused by mold, the report says. The MRA wants consumers to return covered products to the point of purchase, and stores are encouraged to destroy recalled products and provide proof of the destruction or return the products to the original producer. Verides Labs says they are fully cooperating with the agency. Another update in Michigan, the MRA issues a bulletin explaining the 3 options for retesting products. The intent of the bulletin is to provide additional information to assist licensees with retesting products subject to the November 17, 2021 recall. The licensee from which the product originated is permitted to take all of the product back to its physical location, combine the child packages together for resampling, and then retest accordingly. The sales location may send the packages out for testing. These locations have been granted the ability to create test samples. On-site, the laboratory should still sample 0.5% of the present batch. If the licensee from which the product originated still has product on site, the laboratory may go to the source and obtain a sample that is representative of 0.5% of the original harvest batch weight. Once test results are entered, the results will trickle down to all sales locations. In Illinois, medical cannabis retailers to follow Hipaa guidelines in Illinois. New guidance in Illinois published by the Department of Financial and Professional Regulation requires medical and co-located dispensaries in the state to protect patient information in accordance with the privacy and security rules set out in the Federal Health Information Portability and Accountability Act, or Hipaa, statute and attendant regulations. Under the guidance, dispensaries that sell medical cannabis, including those with adult use licenses, must complete a Hipaa security risk assessment by December 1st. That risk analysis includes identifying areas of high security risk for electronic protected health information, an evaluation of the likelihood and impact of the risks, implementation of security measures to address the risks, and documentation of the measures and their rationale. Among other regulations, Hipaa requires that covered medical providers complete initial and then recurring assessments of risks to their IT infrastructure and undertake certain physical, administrative, and technical safeguards to safeguard patient information. Hello, this is the compliance update for the first week in November in New York. New York will not issue adult use licenses until 2023. The head of New York's Cannabis Control Board said last week that she does not anticipate the state will begin issuing industry licenses until the spring of 2023 at the earliest. Tremaine Wright's comments came during a cannabis conference at Comedy at the Carlson in Rochester. The state's legalization law included a launch date of April 1st, 2022 at the earliest, and Governor Kathy Hochul only appointed members to the Cannabis Control Board in September. Hochul was not governor when lawmakers passed the broad legalization bill last March. She would replace Governor Andrew Cuomo in August following his resignation. During the board's meeting in late October, Wright declared the practice of gifting cannabis, including it with the purchase of another often overpriced product, is illegal and that violations could be met with severe financial penalties. While state regulators have been slow to get the cannabis licensing process underway, adult use cannabis sales have already commenced under the jurisdiction of several New York tribes, including the St. Regis Mohawks. A bill has also been introduced that would allow licensed cannabis cultivators to start growing their crops prior to the launch of the formal program, creating provisional licenses that would allow businesses to operate if the Office of Cannabis Management does not propagate program rules by January 1st. That bill remains in the Senate Rules Committee. In Rhode Island awards 5 new medical cannabis dispensary licenses. Rhode Island officials on Friday awarded 5 new medical cannabis licenses for new dispensaries. The lottery selected 5 companies from geographic zones in order to spread out the new providers. RMI Compassion Center won the license for Woonsocket, along with Pinnacle Compassion Center in Central Falls, Green Wave Compassion Center in Foster, Solar Therapeutics in Cranston, and Plant-Based Compassionate Care in South Kingston. None of those municipalities currently have a dispensary, as there are currently just 3 in the state, in Providence, Warwick, and Portsmouth. The lottery for a 6th zone was not included in Friday's announcement due to an ongoing lawsuit by Atlas Enterprises, LLC, which was disqualified because its application is for Newport, which has banned cannabis operations. Atlas is appealing the disqualification, and the lottery for the zone will take place once the case is adjudicated. In Washington, D.C., a Washington, D.C. bill aims to crack down on cannabis gifting. A bill before the Washington, D.C. City Council seeks to crack down on the practice of cannabis gifting by local businesses. The proposal, introduced by Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, would allow city agencies to revoke business licenses and impose fines for purchasing, selling, or exchanging cannabis. Washington, D.C. voters approved broad legalization reforms in 2014, but Congress has repeatedly blocked the city from implementing regulations to allow for legal sales. Senate Democrats have removed the so-called Harris Rider, named after Republican Representative Andy Harris, who first crafted the rider, from a proposed appropriations bill that would allow the district to move forward with cannabis industry regulations and, eventually, permit sales. The City Council has planned a public hearing later this month to consider legislation to allow adult-use cannabis sales. Mandelson's bill included $30,000 fines for businesses that sell or gift cannabis in addition to closing the businesses temporarily. Hello, this is the compliance update for the second week of November in New Jersey. New Jersey will start accepting applications to run legal cannabis businesses next month. New Jersey will begin accepting applications to run legal cannabis businesses next month, bringing the state closer to opening dispensaries and selling cannabis to the public. The Cannabis Regulatory Commission on Tuesday announced it would open the application process to cannabis growers, processors, and testing labs on December 15th. It will open applications for dispensaries on March 15th. There are no deadlines to file applications. The Commission will accept them on a rolling basis. Only cultivation licenses have a cap. 37 new licenses can be issued between February 2021 and February 2023. This is the compliance update for the third week in November in New Jersey. New Jersey is officially open for adult-use cannabis business. 8 months after New Jersey's governor signed the Cannabis Regulatory Enforcement Assistance and Marketplace Modernization Act into law, we now have an application timeline for adult-use licenses. At the last Cannabis Regulatory Commission meeting, the commissioners approved the Notice of Application Acceptance. So let's discuss the timing. Applications will be released in 2 phases. Applications for cultivators, manufacturers, and testing laboratories will be accepted beginning December 15th, 2021 at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Applications for retailers will be accepted beginning March 15th, 2022 at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Regarding the submission format, applications will be accepted through an application portal, which will be posted on the CRC website. Regarding scoring criteria, applications will be accepted on a rolling basis and scored on a pass-fail system. All applications deemed complete will receive full points. Incomplete applications will be rejected and given the opportunity to resubmit. The order of application review is first social equity applicants, diversely owned applicants, impact zone applicants, applicants with bonus points from collective bargaining agreements, project labor agreements, or residency of 5 years or more, and then all other applicants will be prioritized behind those groups. Conditional applications will be prioritized over annual, and micro-business applications will be prioritized over standard business applications. Regarding the cultivation license cap, cultivation applications are also subject to this rolling acceptance, pass-fail, and order of review. Notably, the 37 license cap before February 23, 2022 is still in effect. The CRC will publish additional information regarding impact zones and economically disadvantaged areas. A pre-application webinar will be held on November 30th, 2021. In Connecticut, Connecticut selects a seed-to-sale tracking firm. The Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection's Drug Control Division has selected the BioTrack software as the seed-to-sale tracking of the state's medical and adult use cannabis. The inventory system is a product of Consultants Consortium, Inc. and its partner Forian. DCP Commissioner Michelle H. Siegel said the information will allow state regulators to see what is currently available in both markets, project future inventory, and identify any potential diversion in the markets. Information collected by the BioTrack system will be used by the DCP and the Department of Revenue Services and will be made available to other entities, including law enforcement, as required under the state's adult use cannabis law, which was approved by lawmakers and signed by Governor Ned Lamont in June. While adult use sales are expected in Connecticut sometime next year, Siegel warned in September that the state's timeline for adult use cannabis sales may take longer than legislators first thought. This is the compliance update for the fourth week of November. In New York, New York MTA bans cannabis advertising. All cannabis-related advertising is explicitly prohibited under newly released New York Metropolitan Transportation Authority guidelines. It's the first time the agency has included a cannabis advertising ban in its regulations, as the state only approved its legalization bill in April. The MTA covers advertising on New York City subways and buses. The proposal was included in a summary of the November 2021 MTA board meeting as a response to the recent development in the decriminalization of cannabis in the Empire State. The guidelines also include a ban on hallucinogenic mushrooms or hallucinogenic mushroom-related products. Psilocybin possession and use remain a criminal offense in New York. However, in nearby New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy signed a bill in February reducing penalties for the possession of psilocybin mushrooms. In Massachusetts, the public comment period is now open for Cannabis Control Commission's guidance on hemp. On Thursday, November 18th, the Cannabis Control Commission considered updates to its guidance on hemp, which enables marijuana retailers to purchase and sell consumer-ready hemp and hemp products, and marijuana product manufacturers and micro-businesses to purchase raw and/or processed hemp and hemp products from Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources licensed processors. The Commission will accept public comment in response to the guidance from November 23rd through December 15th, 2021 at 5 p.m. All submissions should be emailed to commission@cccmass.com with the subject line, Guidance on Hemp, Public Comment. Hello, this is the compliance update for the first week in November in Louisiana. Louisiana to allow Delta-8 THC consumables. Louisiana is bucking the trend of banning Delta-8 THC and has proposed the synthetic cannabinoid be allowed in food. In an email announcing the changes, the Louisiana Department of Health said applications are now open for businesses to add cannabinoids to food. The new policy was made possible by a state law that creates a new category known as Consumable Hemp, defined as any product derived from industrial hemp that contains any cannabinoids and is intended for consumption or topical use. This includes the addition of food products containing CBD and Delta-8 THC, the agency wrote in the email. The addition of Delta-8 THC as an allowed cannabinoid in Louisiana will coincide with smokable medical cannabis coming online in 2022. In Oklahoma no longer requires processors' license to make cannabis pre-rolls. Oklahoma medical cannabis operators no longer need to have a processor's license in order to prepare cannabis pre-rolls under the provisions of a state law that took effect on November 1st. The measure was approved by Republican Governor Kevin Stitt in May. The law also allows dispensaries to offer samples for customers, but only for them to touch or smell, not to consume. The bill also allows Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority to inspect cannabis businesses twice a year, make changes to product testing requirements, and extend the time for the Department of Health to review dispensary licenses from 2 weeks to 90 days. The bill also includes provisions allowing the health department to issue 2 types of processor licenses for hazardous and non-hazardous material. Health officials are also tasked with creating regulations to require medical cannabis businesses to submit information to the OMMA deemed reasonably necessary to assist the agency in preventing medical cannabis from being diverted into the unregulated market, according to the bill summary. Hello, this is the compliance update for the second week of November in Oklahoma. The OMMA emergency rules in effect as analog cannabis products go unregulated. The Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority continues to stay busy accommodating new licensed businesses, addressing a growing trend of THC analogs on dispensary shelves and adapting to new emergency rules now in effect. The additional rules became active on Monday with an intention to give the authority more power to act and enforce its own rules, while also adding clarifications for operators from how long records must be kept to requirements for packaging and pre-rolled joints. Outside of the emergency rules, which are now in the public comment period and on track to become permanent in the next year, the authority has made 30 hires in the past month, filling 12 inspector positions. This is the compliance update for the third week in November. In Florida, a massive medical marijuana boom is coming to Florida. Florida cannabis entrepreneurs are gearing up to get awarded 27 new state licenses for medical marijuana treatment centers. These new facilities will double the number of MMTCs in the state, leading to an expected boom in Florida's already large medical marijuana industry. The State Department of Health will issue the new licenses by July 1st, 2023. The state already supports a $1.3 billion medical marijuana industry for 2 primary reasons. Florida is the 3rd largest state in the U.S., and about 20% of the population is 65 and older. The number of people age 65 and older who said they use cannabis jumped by 18% in the most recent National Survey of Drug Use and Health. That makes Florida a dream market for cannabis businesses. In Texas, Delta 8 is temporarily made legal in Texas. A Travis County, Texas judge has temporarily blocked the state from listing Delta 8 THC as a Schedule I narcotic, legalizing the synthetic cannabinoid for the time being. The decision by State District Court Judge Jan Sofer sided with Hometown Hero, an Austin-based dispensary that had filed for an injunction against the state. Hometown Hero said the Texas Department of State Health Services did not alert retailers prior to the October 15th ban. In its counterargument, the state claimed that a notice in the Texas Register, a hearing with no attendees, and a DSHS official's testimony to the legislature in May were ample notice to CBD and hemp retailers. In her ruling, Sofer sided with Hometown Hero, saying the state did not follow their own rulemaking procedures when they issued the ban. This is the compliance update for the 4th week of November in Florida. How pot law's seedy start created Florida's cannabis oligopoly. Back in 2016, an agent for the Federal Bureau of Investigation secretly recorded Tallahassee developer J.T. Burnett, who has since married Kim Rivers, CEO of the multi-million-dollar Florida-based cannabis giant Trulieve, boasting that he and his childhood friend, then Florida House member Halsey Beshears, cordoned off access to commercial cannabis licenses by tweaking a cannabis bill signed into law in 2014 that governed the state's then fledgling medical marijuana industry. The bill mandated that licenses only be granted to nurseries with a 30-year history in the state and the ability to post a $5 million bond. This was an advantage to Burnett's then-girlfriend, Rivers, and to Beshears' brother, Thad Beshears, who sits on Trulieve's board of directors and co-owns Simpson Nurseries, which was founded in 1902. Set up when only low-THC medical marijuana was legal in Florida, The 2014 licensing arrangement gave a small group of companies a tight hold on Florida's cannabis industry, which persists to this day, and makes it seemingly impossible for smaller growers to even attempt to elbow their way into the market. One of the first licenses went to a partnership involving the Bashir's family's nursery. That operation was rolled into Trulieve, now one of the largest cannabis companies in the United States and the most prominent marijuana producer in Florida. Hello, this is the compliance update for the second week of November. The GOP-led federal legalization bill signals congressional shift. A federal cannabis legalization bill is being circulated by Republican members of Congress in preparation for its official filing, expected later this month. The 116-page State Reform Act, led by Representative Nancy Mace, reportedly seeks to deschedule cannabis at the federal level and allot regulatory powers across multiple federal agencies. Under the proposal, the U.S. Treasury Department's Alcohol and Tobacco, Tax and Trade Bureau would be tasked with regulating interstate cannabis commerce, while raw cannabis materials would be regulated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The FDA's authority, meanwhile, would be limited to determining serving sizes and designating state medical cannabis products. The FDA would also still be in charge of regulating cannabis-based pharmaceuticals. The proposal carries a federal 3.75% excise tax on cannabis sales, revenue from which would be dedicated to supporting community re-entry, law enforcement, and financial aid through the Federal Small Business Administration. The bill also includes expungement provisions for certain federal nonviolent cannabis crimes, but does not appear to carry further justice reforms like social equity considerations, which puts it at odds with the other congressional legalization proposals.